I'm going to start a series on studying for the Google Developer Certificate, specifically the Associate Android Developer. To find out about it, you go to developers.google.com/training/certification. So you just click here, and then it brings up the certification information, and you scroll down, and they have these requirements. Basically, you have to be an adult, you have to show an ID. They basically give you some information on a project. You do a project in about 8 hours, like actually writing code, and then you turn it in. They check what you turned in, and then if it looks good, they give you the certificate. So they give you this like real kind of rough idea what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to develop apps, do user interfaces, data management, debugging, testing, that sort of stuff. If you drill in even further, they actually have details of what they consider all this stuff, and I'm not going to bore you with like reading every single one of these bullet items to you. Instead, I'm going to write some code, and I'll throw it up, and everybody can watch the code as we go through and study each one of these pieces of material. I'm going to start out with just like the basics, and then we'll just go from there. This basics is just going to cover Kotlin and Java, how to write like basically your first app, and a little bit of a comparison between the two, and some basics on the IDE. And the app specifically will be a random app to just create random numbers. So to start with, you need Android Studio. So you click here, and then you click download for Mac, if you have a Mac like I do, or you download for PC. Then once it downloads, you just click on it like you would any other program. You drag it over, and then you open it up. And when you open it up, it looks like this. So I'm not going to bother with showing you how to do something you should know how to do, which is dragging, obviously. Then you just need to install it. I went with just standard, and then you can pick like the theme, dark or light, whatever you want to use. You can always change it afterwards if you don't like. You do finish, and it should go through and install. Installed, I obviously skipped over the long tedious part. You click new Android project. We're going to do a empty activity, and then this is where you type in the name of your activity. So we're going to call this hello random Kotlin, and then here you can put whatever you want, but hopefully you put something unique, and if you don't know what to put, you can just put your name there, or make up a fake domain. Do not use somebody else's domain, and this would be the reverse of a domain. So I'll just throw in my domain, just put example. The language we're going to select is Kotlin, because this is going to be the Kotlin example that we're going to do. And then we're just going to click finish. You can pick the API level that you want to use. Right now what we're doing, it doesn't really matter. Basically, by raising the API level, you get access to newer stuff, but then you make it so it doesn't work with the older stuff. So at this point, basically it's going through, and it's going to tell me that there's a new version of Kotlin. I don't care right now. And starting up the app and getting everything installed. So this is going to take a little bit of time because it's the first time that we've ever used it, but this is totally normal. We don't care about this. So this is the general IDE. There's a file system here on the left that is populating. Inside of it you can see that there's all this stuff. So app.main is where this stuff lives that you're going to be interacting with. And then down here there's this file here called strings.xml that holds all the strings for your app. Very important. We will work with this file, so I'm just going to open it up and just leave it there. So it gets done installing Gradle and everything starts up. You're going to notice that it puts you in this window right here, main activity-kt, and then you're going to have another thing right here, activities main.xml. So this basically is the user interface, the .xml file, and this basically is the code that goes along with it. And it's going to get much more complex later on. We're just going to start with just the basics. And once again, you still have your strings.xml. So we are going to minimize this stuff just so it's a little bit easier to find, and it's under Java, and then the name of whatever you created. And we will go to the activities main right here, and you can see that it has this pretty UI. And actually, before we even do anything, we should set up a device. So we're going to say open AVD manager and create a virtual device. And this is where you look for your phone or whichever phone you're going to develop for specifically. But it should run on any of them that you pick. So like right here, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. I think I always pick the largest one I can find, which is the 6.3. It's kind of similar to the Galaxy. And then here it's going to want you to download a version of the software to go with it. And this is which version of Android you're going to have running on that phone. We skip through just to wait. So at this point now you have the API installed. Click next. Finished. And now we have a virtual device. So we're just going to push the play button to get it started and running. We need to proceed with creating the user interface that we're going to use for this random number generator. So I'm just going to jump back to the code and show you what we're going to do. So this is a constraint editor. So this is the UI that we're designing, and this is the constraints that you can see over here, and then there's some attributes over here. And these are the controls that you have on the screen in case you can't see them for whatever reason. And then this is like a toolbox where we're going to drag stuff at. So we're going to delete this, or you can go over here and you can delete it. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, it's like one and the same thing. So now we're going to drag some things. So common, we need a button. So we're going to drag a button down, and it doesn't really matter where you put it at this point. We need a text view, which is where the answer is going to be to the random number. And then under text, we need two numbers, so it says number, and this is going to be something that a user can type in. So we're just going to drag it wherever, it doesn't really matter. Then we kind of hit this little circle here, and we put a little arrow going up, and then we pick a size. I'm just going to use 32 as a value, and this tells it to be 32 from the top. Then we put a constraint on both sides. This tells it to center it. Then on this one, the same thing. Center it, and then we connect to the one above it, and then once again 32. This one, same thing, connect it to the sides. Oop. And then 32. And then the last one, we're going to constrain the sides. Top, and 32. So this is a magic that makes it so it works on different screen sizes. Then on all of these, we need to set the IDs. The ID is what it internally is going to be called. So this one will be the from edit text. Then the next one is going to be the to edit text. So we're going to be letting it pick a number from and to these two values. And then the center one, we will be naming random text view. And this is going to be where the answer goes. And then the bottom, we're going to make a button, and we're going to call this random button. So now all the IDs are set, and then the next thing that we need to do is we need to modify the text. So you can scroll down and find it. It's like right here. But if you don't, really want to look for it, you can just type in what you're looking for up here, and then it's much easier to find. And this would be the word random, but you shouldn't actually type it in there. Instead, what you should do is create a string. So we're going to say add new resource. This is for internationalization, and it's just the right way to do it. So all the strings should be contained in this strings file, and then you'll see that right here it's just referenced. It's still there. This one we're going to blank out. And then from here we're going to put a hint in. Hint is like what's great in the background until the person types it in. So we go here once again. And then we're going to go to this one. Hint Alright, so now you can see there's all kinds of other values over here that you can put in on the right. Pages and pages and pages of them. And if you can't find them, you go to the bottom and you can say all attributes, and then it'll put even more of them. So you can basically see the user will enter one number, another number for the range, and then they push the button, and then it will display right here the value. So now let's try to run it and see what happens. So you want to click the button right here to run the app. This is the emulator. I had to switch the screen because the way I was recording it didn't like the emulator being on the video. But anyway, so this is emulator right here, and as you can see, it started up. And you know, when you click random, it doesn't do anything. And you can put numbers in here, and even if you put numbers in here, it doesn't do anything. So now we're actually going to write the code to make it so this little basic interface that we wrote actually does something. Where we left off, we want to go back to the code. So main activity.kt would be the code. And this is where the constructor is basically where it's creating the context view. So we just want to put a bunch of enters in here, and this is where we're going to write our code. So the first thing you do is you create variables, and the variables basically tie to your controls. So if you just type in val, and then you want to name this the same as the other ones, the same as the UI components. Otherwise it gets very confusing very, very fast. And this is kind of boilerplate. You're going to get used to doing this. You're going to get tired of doing it actually, but you're going to do this probably a whole lot. So basically what you're doing here is you're declaring this value that you're going to use, and this right here searches the project for a edit text box with the ID of the name of the UI component. So these don't necessarily have to be the same, but if you don't make them the same, you're going to confuse yourself basically. So I think the basic naming scheme that everybody uses, or almost everybody uses, is to name them exactly the same. ID to edit text box, and this is going to feel pretty repetitive, like after just doing it a couple times, and it'll get even more repetitive. Text view, find view by ID. This is a text view. Random text view. And the last one is going to be our button. And button. And I like to name the variables with the type, so then I know that this right here, type, is what goes in here. It just makes things easier if you have consistent code. .id dot button, and dot widget button. Okay, it didn't import the button for some reason. And as you saw, these are the imports right here. So if your ID is not set up to automatically add the imports, and you need to have these imports that match these types. So anyway, so now we have these variables that are all bound to those controls that we just put on the screen. And now we need to create a on-click listener. Random button set on click. And you can see the ID has this like really wonderful auto code completion. And this is going to be our listener right here. And then we're going to go in here, we're going to put an if statement. And the if statement is just going to check to see if the text boxes are empty, and also verify that the numbers are in the right order. To edit text, text is not empty. Now if you're a Java programmer, you're going to wonder why I'm directly reading the value. I'm not using a setter or a getter. And actually in Kotlin, this is a preferred way to do it. It kind of goes against like what everybody teaches you when they teach you Java, but it's meant to be kind of a shortcut language, I think. So integer parseInt. So that's why you'll see that I'm directly accessing variables. To string. So now we're going to check to see if this wants to be a Boolean. Let's see. Yep, that's right. We're checking to verify if the numbers are in the correct order. That is, the larger number is larger and the smaller number is smaller. Meta text. And obviously the order in which we are doing this matters. You need to check to see if they're empty first, and then afterwards you can do the comparison. You obviously don't want to compare something that's empty to something else. So next. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually get the random number and set it to the value now that we know that this is good. So we actually need another declaration. Right here, another import. So we are going to import the random number generator, Kotlin random. And it's gray because we have not used it yet. The IDE does a lot of kind of things like that to make life simple. Random next int. And I'm going to space this out so it's a little bit easier to read so it doesn't wrap. Normally I put everything on the same line. Sure, parse int. And this is going to be pretty similar to what we had above. Text to string. So that's the lower value. And then this is going to be the upper value. Integer int to edit text to string, and then plus 1. We need to actually add a 1 to it for it to work properly, and then the whole thing needs to be a string. Okay, so down here what we're doing is we're basically setting that control. So if the 2 and the from are not empty, and then if the to value is larger than the from value, then select a random number, an integer, from the from value, like the lower bound, and then the upper bound is going to be the to value, and then we add the number 1 to it. So then it gets spaced out properly, and then we just set it as a string. So then at this point, basically we should be able to run it. So basically we go up here and we do stop and replay. So now it's going to basically redeploy the app, and you can see that it did that down here, and it successfully installed it. So if we go to the emulator, we should see the apps here. And I'm just going to put a number in like 1 and 5, and you can see that it's giving us our number of random numbers. There's number 5, and just to maybe do a little more testing, 5 to 7. You can see the numbers are there, and then 7 to 2, it doesn't do anything. We can get more complex with throwing up messages and stuff to the users, but this is just a real quick introduction. So now we're going to switch over to doing this in Java, and trust me, this will be very, very quick to do in Java also. And this is just a comparison. So this is what the code looks like in Kotlin. So from here, we just go up to File, New, Project, another empty activity. Hello, random Java. And then we change the language to Java. And we're going to hit finish. And we don't care about tips. Right? And you can see it was much quicker to open up the app. Oh, I spoke too quickly. There we go. And you can see that once again we have our activities, and we also have our code. So from here, to kind of cheat, what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to File, and we're going to say Open Recent, Hello Random Kotlin, and then we want to say Open it in a new window. So now we have 2 of them. We have our Kotlin project, and we have our Java project. we can go back to the XML. We can go back over here to text. We can just grab the whole interface, copy it. We're going to go back over to this one, to the Java one. Once again, we can get rid of this so it's not so confusing. And we're going to go to text. We can just cut and paste it. And then go back to design, and now we have our interface. You can see here that it doesn't have the strings yet, so that's the next thing that we have to do. So if we go back to the Kotlin project, we go down here and we open up app, res, values, strings. There's all the strings for the application, but we only need these three at the bottom, the from, the to, and the random. And then we are going to go to our Java application and do the same thing. Values, strings. You can see that they do not have these strings. I'm going to copy them in. And then if we go back to our interface, you can see that now we have our interface, and it's written in Java. Well, it's for Java, but it's not actually the Java, written in Java. I think this is kind of universal, but we can minimize this again. And in the Java project, now we have copied the strings.xml and the activity main, and we have the same interface with the same variable names and everything. So now we're going to start writing our code. Start with them and declare some private variables. These could be local variables too, but this is just a little example, so it doesn't really matter. This is just semantics. So once again, we have to create these values and tie it to the controls. Text. Sorry, it's like hard to do. Talk and type at the same time, as weird as that sounds. Text view random. Okay, and we don't have our imports. There's Droid widget and then button. Text view. And then we need one more import. I'm going to put it separate just so you can see it. We need the random number generator from Java. Util random. Alright, so now we have all our imports, and we have our member variables. And then once again, we go down here, and now we get to do the boilerplate that's basically the same exact thing. Now we tie these variables to the actual UI components, and you're not going to be surprised at all how similar this is on what we're doing. View by ID, r.id.from, edit text. The nice thing is, from here, we don't actually have to tell it what we're looking for. On the other one, we had to actually typecast everything. And for whatever reason, in Java, you don't have to typecast. Oops, did not mean to do that. View ID, r.id.to, edit text. Random text view equals view by ID. Dot random text view button find view ID r.id random. Alright, so now all the controls are tied to to variables. Now we need to put in a listener once again, and this is going to look almost exactly the same as what we did with Kotlin. Click listener. This one, and then from here we say new view on click listener, and we want the one with the brackets, and it will just pop this code in for you. I didn't type that, obviously. I just auto completed like right here on the on click, and then it popped the code in. Now once again we need to do the same thing that we did before. if to edit text dot get text, and this is going to be slightly different, but it's going to be basically the same result. We're checking the length of the text. We know that it's going to be numbers because it controls only allowing users to put numbers in. Dot length greater than 0. Alright, so now we've checked to make sure that everything, that the numbers are actually there. And now we're just going to get the numbers. Max equals integer, parse int, to edit text, get text. And once again, you can see that we're using get methods now. That's the Java thing to do. Int min equals integer, parse int from text to get text to string. So now we have the min and the max. If, and this is where we had to first check to make sure that there were numbers in there before we actually tried to read the values, otherwise it could potentially crash the app. So since we set them, we couldn't put them in the if statement easily. Random. So now we're going to create a random number generator. Random. String result. And we're going to add the numbers, this little number equation, to empty string, just so it gets all casted correctly. Random.nextInt. So I don't know if you noticed here, but there's only a variable for the upper bound. There's not like a variable for the lower bound. So we have to do a little bit of math here to make this work. Max minus min plus 1 plus min. And what that will do for us is basically by just subtracting them in first and then adding 1, we'll tell the random number generator to generate a number between basically 0 and the range of what we need, and then you add min back to it just so it actually is a number that you're looking for. Random text view, set text result. Alright, and so this is basically the exact same code, except this is the Java variation of it, and you can see it's like very, very, very similar. Once again, we have our imports. We went through and we created some variables. Then we went through and we tied the variables or wired the variables to the controls. Then we created a on-click listener, and then within the on-click listener we had some if statements to check the inputs to make sure that they actually had something that we were looking for in them. And then we went through and we parsed them so they became numbers. And we checked again if they were in the right order, and then we created our random number right here. So we can just go up here and basically hit the play button, and then it'll go through and build our project, and we should be able to, once it gets built, be able to see it run. So if we open the emulator, this still says Kotlin, so it hasn't deployed yet. You can see right here the Gradle script is running. Hopefully it'll be quick. I probably should have pressed play before I start talking. There we go. And it just switched to Java. Now it says Java, random Java. Once again, 1 to 3. 1, 2, 2, 2. Here's our 3. So it works. And then if we pick up bigger bound, like say 5 to 9 or something like that, you'll see that it even works for the upper numbers. So here it is in Java. If you want to do debugging, just to kind of go just a little bit farther, if you do have a problem, you basically just click the number row, you put like a red dot, and then you push the debugger, and then what will happen is basically it'll redeploy the app, and then when it gets to the red, it will actually stop and put you in the debugger, and you can debug from there. So random, and so it stopped, and now you can actually inspect all the different buttons and all the different controls that are at this point, and you can use the pull downs or the hotkeys, or you can just use these buttons here, and obviously this is step over, step into, force step into, and so this allows you to jump over the code and actually look to see what it's doing. And obviously we don't have a problem right now, but if we did have a problem, by stepping over it, you can actually determine like where the problem is, and obviously that's part of the developer certification on knowing how to debug stuff. And we're not going to focus on debugging right now because this is just really the intro on how to get started with it, and hopefully that was a pretty good intro of showing you the Java versus the Kotlin. Let's stop the debugging. There it is in Java, and activity.kt, there it is in Kotlin. Side by side, pretty similar. Cutting off just a little bit of it, but I think that you can pretty much tell. I mean, they both have imports. The Java definitely does look a little bit longer. This right here is equivalent to this. Actually, this right here is equivalent to this half, and then this half right here is equivalent to this. And then we have our a little bit more complex if statement here, but it's the same exact if statement in the end. And then once again, we're generating a random number. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. I will make another video on another project of some kind that's simple to build upon just this little introduction on Android development. Please subscribe. That would be awesome. A thumbs up would also be awesome.